Welcome to the Why Dad podcast. We are your hosts, Paul Wandry and Andrew Stolpelstead, and we are on a mission to figure out what it really means to be a man, a husband, and a father. Not as experts, but as guys trying to figure it out, learning what actually matters, what's just noise, and how to become the versions of ourselves our families need and deserve. This is a place for honest conversations, real habits, and the kind of growth that happens intentionally. And today, to help us on that mission, we're super excited to introduce our guest, Shaun Dawson, host of Raising Men, husband, father of two, and a dad wrestling with a question a lot of us feel right now. How do we raise boys into good men when the world seems so confused about what a good man even is? Shaun, super excited to dig into this question with you. Welcome to the show.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. I am honored to be here.
Oh, we are honored to have you with us. So the feeling is very mutual.
Yes, indeed. We like to start our episode off with a fun and light question. What is the
Paul's
most
favorite.
Yes. If Andrew gets excited and gets in on, something that the guest says, I'm like, no, we got to get back to this question, which is, what is the most dad thing you've done this week?
This week, the most dad thing I did was yesterday. Yesterday afternoon, I took my son to basketball practice. And I struggle so much with basketball practice because my poor boy doesn't know what to do. He is just like literally, he'll sit there with his hand in his pockets and watching the other team try and score baskets and stuff. He just nobody has sat him down and explained to him what to do. And I don't get frustrated about that fact until we're actually at basketball practice. I haven't put in any time. I haven't taken him to the basketball hoop. I haven't talked to him. I haven't taught him what to do. I haven't brought him out to do anything like that. I've done nothing. I've done no prep whatsoever except stick him on a freaking basketball team. And then I have the gall to get pissed off when he doesn't know what to do. And I get so frustrated. So yesterday that happened also. I managed to contain myself. I ended up taking some video and then managed to explain to him, all right, here's what happened. And here's something you did really, really great because I happened to get that on video. And then here's something that you should think about improving on. And it ended up being a really positive conversation. But man, that came out of a place of real frustration. And I had to get really creative and how to make it so that it wasn't a negative experience for him. I want him to love sports. And if he's got this dad who's just like, you got to perform all that stuff, that's not going to happen.
Right.
Yeah. No, thanks for sharing with that. I think that feeling is something that a lot of us dads, and Andrew, probably you as an uncle,
As an uncle, yep.
can relate with. It's just like, just do the thing.
Yeah. He's
Just
the
grab
tallest
the
kid by
ball.
head and shoulders. He's the tallest kid on the team. He's only 7, but he looks like he's about 9 or 10. And so there's no excuse. He should get every rebound. I'm like, why aren't you? That's your ball. Go get it. And
Yeah.
he just doesn't know where to stand. He doesn't know where to be. He's not there yet. It's my fault.
Where do you think like that kind of conflict that you experienced there and that many of us dads experience, where it's like where that frustration arises from,
Yeah. It's ego, man. 100%. It's ego. At least, I can't speak for other people, but I can speak for myself. I want to be the dad of a kid who's great at sports. I want to be the dad of a kid who's fantastic at basketball. I want that for him too. But the reason I get frustrated about it, the reason that it makes me mad and it triggers my Conan the Barbarian brain, like I talk about all the time, is because when it's not happening, I feel like a failure deep down because I should have done that stuff. I should have gotten the basketball out and taken him out back and taught him about everything. I should have taken that time and I should have been present with him and done all those things, but I didn't. And so that means I'm a failure as a dad. And of course that doesn't. I succeed in a lot of other ways, but that's when that stares you in the face, right? And so you get presented with that, and I like to make excuses, I think. Internally, I want him to be good because I want him to be able to fit in and I want him to experience success and all that stuff. But I care more about it than he does. And part of the reason I care more about it than he does is because deep down, I really want it to reflect well on me.
Right.
And Of course, that's one of those things where it's a goal that you have to approach obliquely or it runs away from you.
Yeah. Yeah, I
You,
can
you,
I can definitely relate with that. I'm sorry, Andrew. I'll say this quick and then I'll let
I
you
was
go.
gonna say the same thing, just as an uncle.
I'll bet it is. I'll bet it is because, there's pride that you have there too.
Hmm.
And so it's I mean, it's different, but it's not that different.
Yeah. Yeah, I can say that the times, you know, where I am most likely to lose my cool, um, are times where I am parenting in um, in a public situation.
Mm.
I think and my like the reason is because I'm worried about what other people are thinking
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
the expectations of my child, the social expectations of my child. So all of a sudden, I'm not parenting my child according to his or her needs and according to our family values. I'm parenting according to social expectations. And then that conflict, I think, is maybe similar to that in a way where it's like, okay, hey, you want this thing, which in and of itself isn't a bad thing, right? Like you want your kid to do well at sports or whatever. But then there is that conflict between like where your kid is at or where my kid is at and what truly matters.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, I mean, if you could take your ego out of it, a lot of that goes away. A lot of that pressure goes away and you get a better
Hmm.
result too.
Mhm,
You do.
mhm. Have to, like yeah, just have to parent kinda like in a bubble, just pretend everybody else isn't there, it's you and your kid,
But you know
so
what? People are gonna see that, like the effort you put in, and I've caught myself like as an uncle, just seeing a dad struggle when I take my nieces and nephews to the zoo, and there's another dad there struggling with the kid, and he's keeping his cool and whatnot, like, and trying to help the kid through it. Like it clicks in my brain, like I see you trying,
Yeah.
like you're doing a good job.
Yeah. And you're like, man, and you just kind of want to, you want to hug the guy, man. You're just like,
Yeah,
nice,
exactly.
nice work there. I've had people do that to me where I will have handled a particularly challenging situation in public and people will come up to me afterwards and say, man, you're a really good dad. I,
Hmm.
hasn't happened often because the opportunities for that are few and far between for a lot of different
Hmm.
reasons. But yeah. And that's, if you see that happen, if you see a dad out there struggling, man, give him a pat on the back and say, good work because we freaking need it. Yeah, this is the other thing. We don't do a good job of brotherhood.
Yeah.
Mhm,
Part of the reason that I started my my whole project was because of that realization. And so like that's a great opportunity to
Hmm.
foster a little bit of brotherhood, isn't it? You see a dad
mhm.
out there and he's struggling with a tough kid. Now you can't go up there right there, but right when he's going through it, but after he's done,
Right.
just go up there and say, "Hey man, I saw what you did there and great job."
Yeah, that's a really great point. Like yeah, brotherhood, community, I th I think today's world, like social media, the transactional nature of everything, of capitalism, materialism, everything, it removes that like it takes a village concept, whereas what you're suggesting is like we're just injecting a little bit of that back into daily
Hmm.
life. And gosh, does it feel good? It feels good, to be the recipient of that encouragement. Man, it feels good to be, part of that and saying, hey, like you're doing a good job.
Mhm.
So talk to me a little bit about that, that impetus to start this project. Like one was recognizing the confusion that's around masculinity today, or maybe
Hmm.
not so much community, but very strong opinions and both sides of the aisle, so to speak. And then in addition to it, like this lack of community, this lack of brotherhood, this isolation.
Hmm.
What were those kind of like how did those two pain points what was the tipping point for you?
Yeah, I it started because I it's a couple different things. The first one is I, uh, I would call it a crisis. There's a masculinity crisis in our culture, and the nature of the masculinity crisis, in my view, it's got a bunch of reasons for it, and which we could talk about. But the nature of it is that a lot of the discourse on the subject is very polarized, and so you have this kind of left coded message about masculinity that having genitalia on the outside of your body is bad
Hmm.
and so in being, men have had their time and it's time for other people to whatever. And our boys should be more like girls. And that is a very alienating point of view for those of us who are men. And as a result, a lot of men get driven over to the other side of that spectrum. The only other message they're getting is the right coded message, which is all no, masculinity is about being an asshole. And you should
Yeah.
just embrace everything that everybody says is bad. You should embrace it. And it's almost like vice signaling as opposed to virtue
Right.
signaling on the other side. And the fact is that neither of those messages are true.
Mhm.
And we know that. Like, we know that social media and Twitter and YouTube and all of that stuff are not real life, and yet we feel like they are. And we absorb the messages as if they are because our brains are wired in that way. And the algorithms are trying to do that to us. They're trying to polarize us. They're trying to get us mad so that we stick our eyeballs on that screen. That's what their
Right.
business model is. And so that was part of it. We've got a masculinity crisis that's getting exacerbated by a bunch of cultural forces, not the least of which is social media. There's a second thing, and that's what I mentioned about brotherhood. A couple years ago, my best friend from high school came to me, and I was in his wedding. I was the best man at his wedding, and he said, "Oh, I got to talk to you about something." And I said, "Well, as long as you're not telling me that you and your wife are getting divorced, we're in good shape." And it was just crickets. I was like, "Oh my gosh, what's going on?" And he told me, "We got to do something about this. We got to solve the problems. We got to do all that."
Mhm.
And he goes, "No, man, the boat sailed." And then he started telling me about the last 10 years of his marriage. And it was pretty awful. Like, what he experienced was really tough.
Mhm.
I was like, "Why didn't I know this?" Like, we've been we've been best friends for 30 years. Why didn't I know any of this stuff? And like, I felt betrayed because he didn't share it with me. And then I
Right.
realized, wait a minute, I haven't shared, like, I've got struggles. I've got a bunch of stuff, difficult things I'm going through too. I haven't shared any of that stuff with him.
Mhm.
So I was pissed off at him for denying me the ability to be a good friend to him. And now I'm pissed off at myself for denying him the ability to be a good friend to me. And I realized that, my wife has 8 people she shares every detail of her life with. She's got this amazing community, and we don't have anybody. Most men don't have
Right.
anybody that they can talk to. And that's because
Mhm.
all of the institutions that used to create brotherhood are crumbling. We don't have bowling leagues anymore. We're not going to church anymore. We're not doing all of these things that created that brotherhood for us. And
Mhm.
and that's there's an opportunity in that, which is we can be intentional about creating those things anymore. We don't have to default to going to church or whatever. But it's also a serious problem because we have to be intentional about it, and we
Mhm.
have to seek each other out. And we men are not wired to do that. They're just not.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. We when we get together, it's the typical conversations. Sports. We're out here in the Midwest, weather. Things like that. Like, or how are the kids doing, or all those like good, but kind of things outside of us, as opposed to like how are you doing, and actually being willing to open up. You know.
Mhm.
So the question remains, or the question is that comes to my mind is like, how do we bridge that gap? Because, like most men I don't think are going to want to get like, they might be a little turned off by like, oh, like I don't want to open up, like
Mhm.
I don't need to open up. I'm doing just fine,
Yeah. That's actually so that is the conventional wisdom, and
Mhm.
it's a myth. It is absolutely true that most men don't open up. And so the easy explanation, oh, well, they don't want to. That's not true. Very, very few men will not open up if given the chance.
Mhm.
The problem is they don't feel safe. They don't feel like it's masculine. They don't feel not in an environment where they feel like they can open up without negative consequence.
Yeah.
And that situation is getting worse also because our lives are increasingly public.
Mhm.
They're, like everything's on social media now or whatever. And so that data can get out there. Oh, Sean was in the corner crying about whatever. And
Mhm.
that could be a problem for me. It could be a problem professionally. It could be a problem, in all of these things. And so we have to get over that. And we have to create spaces. We have to create safe spaces for our brethren to do that. And if we do, it will happen. I started going to some men's groups recently as part of this exercise, and it's amazing the kinds of stories that come out. And it's not even a pressure. I'm trying to find the right word, but it's like you feel drawn to share your experiences because this other guy is being so generous with his emotional experience as well. And
Yeah.
it's intoxicating. It's energizing. And, I mean, there are men's groups all over the place. You gotta find them and you just gotta go.
Yeah, uh, thank you for bringing that up because that's something Paul and I have been trying to do as well, and we've noticed, just in a couple of our groups we've went to, friends of ours going through things that we had no clue about, and I sat there, I'm like, "Am I a bad friend for not knowing about this?" To the second point you brought up, right before we started recording, I was watching a reel, and they were just asking guys, "When things are dark, who do you call?" And everyone said, "Nobody. Who would even care to listen to me?" And I started reading the comments, and it came back to that whole safe space too. It's like, why would I tell anybody anything if they're just gonna use it against me later on? And it blew my mind to, like, 'cause I didn't think about that aspect of it, and then I started thinking about, obviously, how I'm gonna ask you, like, how do you even bring that up to, like, your son? Like, it's okay to, build this type of support for yourself as you get older. Like, how would you address that with kids to
Yeah.
teach them that?
Yeah. And that's the other paradox. It's one of those goals you have to approach obliquely. You can't tell him. You can't teach it to him. It's not something that happens in words. You have to model it. He
Mhm,
has to experience that for himself. He has to experience that safety with you. He has to be able to come to you and say those things and not feel, and he has to be able to be vulnerable without it causing a problem. He has to see you do it with other people as well. He has to
mhm.
see you apologize when you get things
Yeah.
wrong, right? And so that's the only way to cultivate it. And after you've done it, and after you've modeled that activity, and after you've said those things, you can then talk about it. You can say, "Hey, remember that thing? How did you feel after said that thing to your buddy?" But unless you've you've prepared the ground, it doesn't take effect.
Mhm. Okay. So really it's the lead by
Yeah,
example
80% of
and
it.
not
80
yeah.
to 90% of it is just a lot of what you need to do in order to cultivate excellence in your son is to cultivate excellence in yourself.
Mhm.
I gotta write that down. Thank you, Sean. That's a good point.
Yeah, and that makes me think, like so much of parenting really is that, and that might be a little bit of, well, I can speak from my experience, a little bit of a shift from how I was parented versus how we're attempting to parent, and that's we're trying to do what you're talking about here, and that's like convey the message or help them assimilate the message, as opposed to, and I am wording this strongly, but like forcing it down their throat, right? Like spoon feeding it, and that's the challenge. Like when I was raised, was like, this is how it is, no ifs, ands, or buts. Why? Because I said so. And I grew up in a very loving home, and I'm very grateful for my parents and everything that they have done for me and my siblings. Like, don't get me wrong on that. But and they were parenting the best way they knew how, and they were parenting from a place of love. But that is how it came across. And so I didn't buy into it, like I did what I was supposed to do because I didn't want to get in trouble, you know? But like I didn't buy into most of it. And that, so what I think it sounds like what you're proposing is kind of like it's the longer and harder path. You might not get the behavior you want initially, but by modeling it and talking them through it and whatever, you are laying the groundwork so that way, when like down the road, all of a sudden that seed that you planted finally blossoms.
Yeah, you're cultivating a garden, and okay, you can scream at their face, and you can say it's my way or the highway and stuff like that, and that's like planting a plastic flower in the garden. And sure enough, there's a flower there. That's fine, but it's not going to grow into its full glory. It's not going to the rest of the garden. It's not going to populate the rest of the garden with flowers. It's not going to. It's not. That's not building the garden. That is sticking a flower in it.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, I mean, there is a time actually to yell at your kid. If my kid were running in the street and I ran along beside him and said, "Hey, like, what are you thinking about in terms of where you're headed right now?" Is this the proper goal of the rest of your life? We're going to both get run over by the bus. So,
Right.
I mean, but the times when that's the right, that's I have this metaphor I talk about. We've got two brains in our heads. We've got the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala. And the amygdala is your Conan the Barbarian brain. It's reactive. It only feels. It doesn't, and it's very fast.
Mhm.
It's just like immediate reaction and all that stuff. And that's what you need when you're jumping out of the way of the bus. But the vast majority of circumstances that we encounter in our modern existence are better served the more we can engage our Sherlock Holmes brain, the prefrontal cortex.
Mhm.
And it is so hard to stay in the prefrontal cortex. Everything in the world, especially stuff your kids do, want to drop you into that Sherlock Holmes brain. You want to scream at their face and you just want to like, shut up and, get in line and do all that stuff, sit down and
Mhm.
shut up that kind of way. And it's just never the right thing to do these days. It's
Right.
almost never the right thing to do.
Yeah. And that juxtaposition between Conan the Barbarian and Sherlock Holmes makes me think of probably one of the focal points of the masculinity controversy, and that's on, as you described it, like kind of like the left painted side. It's okay, don't be a man, like
Yeah,
be
men are
more
bad.
like yes, and then
Masculinity
on
is
the
evil.
other side is like it's the alpha male, no pain no gain,
Evil is a virtue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yes. But the focal point, I think, is in today's society. Well, let's take it a step back farther. Um, up until very recently, men were out doing hard things, dangerous things, risky things, and that was from the get-go, hunters and gatherers. Like men were the
Mhm.
ones out hunting
Yeah.
largely. So it's kind of built into who we are as men. And so I think today, we feel that lack because there's not like, sitting at a desk, you're not getting a lot of sense of adventure or a lot of risk, or the risk that you're dealing with is on a completely different level. And so that I think that is the kind of the focal point where there's overcorrection, from the, evil is good side as you stated. And then former side, there's just like that significant lack of that. My point is like, and it's not necessarily correlated exactly with the prefrontal cortex, right? With the Conan the Barbarian, but that kind of that urge to do adventurous, hard, risky things is there and it's not always being scratched, that itch. So how do we find a balance between, okay, yes, we're going to maintain the Sherlock Holmes brain, but we're also going to make sure that we're answering these needs.
Yeah, the call of the wild, so to speak. I'm
Mhm.
with you. Yeah, well, and by the way, those are good things to cultivate in our sons, right? I mean, it is valuable to be able to go out in the woods and survive
Oh,
for
yeah.
a weekend, right? And that's not because we ever need to do that. I mean, I guess if the zombie apocalypse happened, then those would be important, useful skills, and that could happen. But it's important to feel self-sufficient. It's
Yeah.
important to feel like you are worthy of life's challenges, and that's a good way to do that. And, I mean, I think that but it's also important for that to be something real as opposed to performance.
Mhm.
And what I see a lot of performative masculinity, especially online. It's doing stupid stuff that is risky, like for the sake of doing the stupid stuff, right? Or for the
Right.
sake of YouTube views.
Mhm.
I have a hard time thinking that that's actual masculinity. And frankly, I mean, I don't know that the idea of masculinity has changed since Marcus Aurelius's time.
Mhm.
It's, I mean, what we think about as masculinity, I mean, the culture is changing. The requirements of a man have changed. But if you close your eyes and you imagine what you think of as what is a real man, what is the ideal man for me in terms of my values, we're all gonna come up with similar things, and and in fact, if we brainstormed about it, we would get better and better and better, and we would drill down and drill down, but these are things like a man is someone who stands up in a storm, right?
Right.
And has compassion for those who fail. That's from Douglas MacArthur. And he said that during World War II. A man is someone who's always serious but doesn't take himself too seriously. Those things, these are timeless. And they apply whether or not, whether we're in a hunter-gatherer society where, man, you better go out and you better kill that lion with a club or we all starve to death, or we're in our modern society where we're pretty removed from those life or death struggles. And now it's more about creating a safe emotional space for your family so that they can thrive.
Paul, you're
Right.
Oh, we
Oh,
got a
and he's
dog
here?
back. Oh, hello. Hello, sweet girl.
Here, they said hi.
How are you doing? Yeah? Are you
What
having a
did you
great
find?
day? You get to hug your dad? Look at that. Are those acorns or walnuts? Those are walnuts. Wow, those are
So,
enormous walnuts.
are we going to roast them up? Okay.
That sounds
Okay. Mom's
amazing.
mom's calling you. Okay. You want to wrangle the dogs? Yes.
I love
All right.
that.
Today's intermission brought to you by Evie.
I love it. And there is a non-zero possibility that exact same interruption is going to happen for me. My daughter might come walking up those stairs any minute now.
Oh, that's awesome.
we're a dad podcast, and we welcome all those dad moments,
That's right. That's right. That's a hazard.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Go ahead, Andrew. Sorry for the
going back
interruption.
to something you said, coming up with like the ideal man for us, and us as grown men, as dads, as uncles, how do we help our sons figure that out? Like, where do we start that conversation with them? What's the type of man you want to be, or how to help them to understand the right masculinity in that sense?
Yeah, I think it starts. I mean, the very first, again, we have to lay the groundwork. And so, how do we lay the groundwork? It's the same. We have to model it for our kids. We have to get our boys, and this is true. This is true regardless of who the parent is, whether you're a single parent or you've got two parents in the household or whatever. You need your boys to spend time around worthy men. Now, if you are a worthy man, then you get at least one by default.
Right.
And if you have a bunch of friends that are also worthy men and you have your boys spend time with you and those friends, there's a bunch more. If you're a single mom, it is tremendously important. You have to be intentional about seeking this stuff out because young men who are children of divorce have much worse outcomes than women who are children of divorce. And those worse outcomes go away if the men have a male role model in the house. And so it is just tremendously important that young men have, especially by the time they turn 12 or 13 years old. I had a guest who is just an amazing fatherhood author named Steve Biddulph, and he cited a bunch of research for me about when young men are turning 12 and 13 and 14, that's when they start looking outside the home for their examples. And you want them to be able to find worthy examples of masculinity out there in the wild. Otherwise, they're going to seek them out themselves.
Right.
And they're going to go on YouTube and they're going to find what they're going to find on YouTube.
Yeah.
And that's not a good place for them to be. And so it starts with that. You need to supply a supply of worthy men for your son to experience. The more he just needs to be able to absorb it.
Mhm.
And again, we used to get that. We used to get that in our bowling leagues and our churches and all of those things. And so we have to seek it out. We have to make it happen. And by the way, it can have sports is a really good shortcut for this sort of thing.
Yeah.
Because sports, you're gonna, and especially in the older ages, the sports are segregated by gender. And so, your boy is going to be with a lot of other boys and, it's the fathers are usually going to be there. And so,
Mhm.
let's go hang out and at basketball practice, right?
Right.
So that's a pretty good shortcut for that sort of thing. But, it doesn't have to be sports. If your kid's not into sports, I mean, you can, there's other ways to make that happen, but
Mhm.
you got to be intentional about that. And then once you're kind of bathed in that, you can start having the discussion. Well, what do you think about what do you think about this? Or what do you think about, are there any girls you're interested in having those sorts of conversations, right? Once
Yeah.
they get old enough. I'm not there yet. So I have a lot less wisdom than I think a lot of other people would on that. I'm still in those early stages. My boy's only 7, so it's a little bit easier for me so far.
Yeah.
Yeah, you hear, like, all the stories going to the sports one of, like, pro athletes who come from, like, a family of divorce or even inspiring sports stories in general where the coach was that male figure, that role model on how to be a real man, and even when they make pro or whatever, they still call their high school coach to ask, like, "I need advice on this," or "I need help with that," and so, yeah, I agree with you, sports being a real quick shortcut if the kid's into sports because that can have a long-lasting impact.
Yeah. And it strikes me, Sean, that also, like, mentioned getting involved in men's groups around you. Like, that's probably another way to connect with men or surround yourself with men who are intentional because I think it's kind of written into the description there. Like, people who are doing that, like, they're trying to be better men, better fathers, better
Self-selecting group
husbands.
of people who are trying to make themselves better.
Yeah. And maybe even I'm just kind of brainstorming here, maybe even being intentional about like your group of friends, like are they good influences? Maybe spend more time with those who drive you to be a better person or who are good for your kids. Or I don't know if you have anything else to add, any other ways for our listeners.
Yeah, I think those are the 2 main ways. I think there's a third component too, which is family. Andrew, you're an uncle. It sounds like you
Yep.
spend a lot of kids around or a lot of time around your nieces and nephews. I mean, that's also another source, right? And it can be a source for good or for bad. You can have the uncle who's not a great
Right.
role model, and maybe you limit exposure, but not necessarily think, I've known of kids, or I've had friends that have had, where their uncle is not really the kind of man that
Mhm.
they should be, and spending time around that person, he's the cool uncle when they're 15, and by the time
Right.
they're 19, it's like, wait a minute, this guy doesn't have a job and he's sleeping on someone's couch every day.
Mhm.
And, like, that's not necessarily like, maybe I wanna borrow some of the things that he has, but not some of the other things. And so, negative examples are not necessarily a problem
Mhm.
if they're framed properly, and if there are a sufficient number of positive examples to be able to draw the appropriate distinctions. So, I think, so that's one thing I would add. I would have family as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go ahead, Paul.
Oh, I was just going to say that's a great point. It makes me think of a quote I heard today, um, where you prepare the child for the road, not the road for the child. Where if you're like trying to kind of protect them from everything, all bad influences, all negative influences,
Mhm.
you're kind of doing that. You're kind of preparing the road for the child. But then when they actually get on the road, they're going to get run over because they don't know to step out of the way of the oncoming vehicle. So, but yeah, that quote was from actually, I don't know. I'll have to share that in the notes.
I
So
love it. I would push back on it a little bit because there's a tension. And so you also have to clear the road of the landmines. And there are landmines out there.
yeah,
And so you have to do a little preparation of the road. And I don't know that I have all the answers on this stuff. I'm just like you guys. I'm a freaking idiot dad trying to figure this out as he goes along. And
Mhm.
one of the things I realized is, man, my reflexes, the stuff I grew up with, 50 years ago, they're maladaptive to our modern world. And I need to talk to people who are really smart. And I need to make friends with people who are also struggling with this stuff so that I can get the best result for my kids. And so, but yeah, what I'm saying is there's a tension there. And there's a little bit of road preparation that you got to do. You're not going to make him hack his own way through the jungle initially. You'll forge a little bit of a path. You you don't shy away from difficulty. Difficulty is where the growth happens. Failure
Yeah.
is where excellence happens, right? And so, I mean, yeah, there's that tension. And my own attitude is, if he's not going to incur permanent damage, then I'll just let him do the thing.
Mhm.
And if he is going to incur permanent damage, then no, it's just a no.
Yeah.
That's it. That's my rule. And so, if he wants to climb on the rocks and he's going to fall down and maybe hurt himself, he's not, I don't think he's going to break something. If he broke something, it would be, I wouldn't allow that to happen. But,
Mhm.
I don't mind a sprained ankle here and there or stuff like that. I mean, being a kid can hurt sometimes. That's okay.
There's that, and then with my 2 nephews, so, like, sometimes with conflict resolution, I apply what I apply what you do too with my nieces and nephews, like, if they're having fun and there's no danger of loss of life or limb or something like that, then, life when you get old is hard. You gotta learn when you're young too that you make mistakes and you realize, "I'm not gonna do that again." But with the conflict resolution, the 2 little ones will just duke it out. At one time, my mom came and was like, "You gonna stop it?" I'm like, "There's no blood yet."
Yeah, exactly. So this is, I mean, I'll bring up Steve Biddulph again. And by the way, I mean, just read everything that Steve Biddulph has ever written. It is beautiful. It's just absolutely fantastic. But one of the things that he talks about is that wrestling is a sign of love. It is an expression of love. Wrestling and roughhousing and all of that is part of the way that men show love to each other.
Mm,
Yeah, no, we don't shut that down. I mean, throwing punches, different deal.
mhm,
But but just roughhousing, even if it's angry roughhousing, that's love for boys.
yeah.
Mhm.
And women don't get that. By the way, women don't get that. It's scary for women. They don't do that stuff. If you ever seen women fight, it's deadly. Women
Mhm,
will kill each other. And men, like even strangers, men will fight, and neither of them will get hurt all that much.
yeah.
And I mean, that's
Mhm.
not always the case, and men should never fight physically, but it does happen. But boys, yeah, let them. Man, it's a good thing.
Mhm.
And I'll roughhouse with my boy. Law.
I'll get on the floor and
Yeah.
go around or two with the nephews.
One of my sayings around the house is mama for comfort, daddy for body slams.
I love that. But what you said just had me thinking, and just reflecting, like all of my closest friends in life have been someone that at one point I've just had like horrible
Yeah.
arguments or disagreements, and then you settle it with a beer at the bar or whatever right after it's over. And I've never been closer to like any other guys. Like we've always had just butting heads like that, and then yeah, that bond, that relationship, that friendship and brotherhood really deepened after all that. We've gone through the dark time together,
Yeah.
and we know we can stand that.
Yep. Yeah. That's part of what forges that bond. And so yeah, it's a good thing to let that happen.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, great stuff. We covered a lot here. I know we still have a little bit of time, but I want to allow time for our rapid questions and then a wrap up because I know that always takes us a while with our Minnesota goodbyes.
Put me on the spot. I'm nervous.
Don't worry, we'll get a hot dish to you somehow. So okay, so rapid fire questions. The questions are rapid fire. Each can be an episode of themselves, but yeah, just give us a 1 to 2 sentence answer, and yeah, I think we'll have some fun here. So, what does being a good dad look like to you?
Yeah, the metaphor. Well, you said a one or two sentence answer, so I'll avoid trying
As
to
best
get
as
into a
as
big
best as you
story.
can.
The metaphor that I like to use is our responsibility is to create a castle. When you think about a castle, you think about a lot of what people think about is how strong the walls are. The barbarians are going
Mhm.
to come for us, and we don't want them to be able to get through. And that was a lot more important 1,000 years ago than it is today. Today, the more important component of the castle is how much area it encompasses. Your job as a father is to create a safe space for your family to thrive. And so the bigger that area is, and the more secure that area is, the better your family is able to thrive. And that's it. It is real easy to get caught up in your own shit. It's real easy to let your ego get in the way. And like I was at basketball, and I start to get mad because my son's got his hands in his pockets because he doesn't know what to do. And I think it's his failure, not mine. And so I start getting mad. And in fact, when the end of that story, when I showed him those videos, and we had this nice conversation about, oh, here's what you did great, and here's what you could have done better. He said to me, and this is a testament to my own failures as a father with him. He said, "Are you mad at me?" And I said, "No, boy. How are you supposed to know any of this stuff? Like,
Right.
nobody's taught you this. I'm mad at myself that I haven't taught it to you. Like, I want you to succeed here. I want you to love this game." And I need to figure out a way to get this information to you so you know what you're doing. And but he was worried that I was gonna be mad because he wasn't already good. How did I convey that to him? That's an example. That's a counterexample of what I'm talking about. That's not safe. The basketball court wasn't a safe place for him to fail because he was afraid because I had so much freaking ego wrapped up in that. You gotta not do that, right? You gotta
Yeah.
I mean, your job is security. And you know what? I do a lot of things really well in terms of that. I don't yell and scream and I don't hit or any of those things but yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
think being a good dad is.
And I love that metaphor. And I what I also hear from you, Sean, in this example and then throughout this episode is like you are being extremely intentional and you're thinking about those things. Like, for example, this story where you're sharing as a shortcoming of yours, like you're thinking, okay, like this is what I could have done differently and this is what I will do differently next time. And I mean, I think that is going to manifest itself to your kids as well. Like you're showing, okay, yeah, I don't have it figured out now, or I've got these shortcomings now, but I'm not going to just leave it at that. And then you're also focusing on the things that you are good, which is
Yeah.
so
How else are they supposed to learn that it's okay to struggle? It's okay not to
Right.
be good at things. You're not gonna be good at things when you start doing things.
Yeah.
mhm.
No, I
Yeah.
I I
Go ahead, Andrew.
I appreciate you sharing that anecdote too, because that's something that as you were telling me that story, it brought back this memory of when I was in my 20s, and I had a similar conversation with my dad about that, and I asked him the same question because I was living on the East Coast, and I decided I wanted to move back to Minnesota. Things didn't work out for me out there, and I called my dad right away, and I just said, "I need to come home, and this isn't me out here." It was more like, "Are you okay with that?" And he picked up on it, and he said, what he told me, like, will always stick with me. It's like, he just asked me, he's like, "Are you happy out there?" Or, "Are you sure what you're doing is for your own happiness and peace and well-being, or making someone else happy?" And I had to answer, "No, this is me." He's like, "Then I'm happy, because if you're happy, I'm happy."
Thanks for sharing that, Andrew. Yeah, there's a lot more that can be said about all this, but
Like you
Sean,
said,
like
well,
I said,
let's do a quick fire question with a bunch of questions that could be 45-minute episodes in and of themselves.
yep,
He did
like I
caveat that
said.
with our Minnesota nature, so
That's right.
Okay, next one. What is the number one habit that helps you show up as a dad?
I'll tell you what I'm working on now, and that is I just interviewed a guest, and there were a couple of things that really stuck out for me, and one of them was that he had this amazing there was another guest that was like this too, an ex-Navy SEAL named Eric Davis, and I was blown away by this. He had an extreme facility with definitions, and it's a crazy superpower to have. But it's really interesting. If you ask somebody, go around and just in the general public and say, "What's masculinity?" or "What's fatherhood?" or "What's brotherhood?" or "What's passion?" or "What's leadership?" or any of those things, these kind of vague terms, you're going to get a mealy mouthed answer from most people. They're going to hem and, well, leadership is when blah, 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 all this stuff. And you ask this guy, and he was like, no, leadership is the experience he's got it absolutely nailed down. And I think having that clarity of vision, having those things, having thought about, no, wait, this is what masculinity is to me. And it's not a
yeah.
mealy mouth thing. Masculinity is this, or whatever the thing is. As much as you can nail down and you can define and you can say, no, no, this is what it is. And then you get those definitions established before you start talking. When you sit down and you talk to your son, no, 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 we do not behave that way because in our world, we don't hit or hurt in this family, and this is why we do that, because this is the thing. You need to be clear-eyed about that. And so I think that's probably the number one thing, but it's also something that I'm not particularly good at. As you noticed, I didn't have a concise example of a good definition that I could even give you in this description. And so it's something that I'm actively.
You're on mute, Paul.
You're muted, Paul.
Well, thank you. You're not reading lips. That's not your habit, your number one habit. Yeah. But that's what these podcasts are for too, right? Like Raising Men and Why Dad, like to kind of help us and help other men to come up with those definitions, to ask those questions
That's right.
and come up with those definitions.
That's right. I'm struggling with them. just as everybody else is.
Mhm.
Yes, yes. Amen to that. Andrew, I think next one's on you.
So, you already answered one of my normal questions that I have, and that was when you brought up the point about family and, being that good role model and uncle, so we get to skip one of my questions. My second question, I ask this to every guest, whether they're a dad or aspiring dad or whatever their situation is. What advice do you have for me, who's not a dad, or anyone in my situation, single, that wants to be a dad? What's one key piece that you've taken from your life on that and you wish you could tell Shaun before he was a dad?
Yeah, that's actually two different questions.
It
And so I'm gonna answer the second one first, which is what do I wish I could go back in time and tell my former self. It's another one of these tension things. I would tell him that you're nowhere near as prepared as you think you are for this. That's one side of the tension. But the other side of the tension is you're gonna do freaking great. It's all about it's all about the effort. 90% of it is just showing up.
Yeah.
And the remaining 10%, you'll get it figured out. So that's what I would tell myself.
Mhm.
What I would tell you or an aspiring dad, especially somebody who has young men in their life that aren't their own kids, is you have a
Mhm.
privileged position. You have an opportunity to have a particular degree of trust and a particular type of relationship with your nephews that his parents will never have.
Yeah.
And you can say things to them that will be accepted in ways their father can come and say, well, you should think about this, and this is what you need to go to college because X, Y, and Z. And you
Right.
can come in and say the exact same thing. You need to go to college between X, Y, and Z, and it will sound true coming from you, and it will sound like a manipulation coming from their dad.
Yeah,
You
an
have a
order.
privileged position, and you should respect that, and you should use it, and you should revel in it. It's exciting and it's awesome. And like just bask in it. It's freaking cool.
I will. Thank you, Shaun.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Shaun. One more question. Where can people find you?
Yeah. So the podcast is called Raising Men, and we're on YouTube and Spotify and Apple Podcast and all the places. We've got a website at raising.men. And you can always reach out to me at podcast at raising.men. I love to hear from people, ask questions, whatever I could do to be of service. That's the whole game right there.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Shaun. Thank you for your time. We covered a lot today. We covered like the differing opinions on what masculinity is, the very polarizing opinions, and what we think it actually is. And we talked about how we, first and foremost, need to show up and model what it is to be men to our kids. And a lot of other juicy tidbits in there as well. So thank you for your time, for sharing your experience and knowledge with us. And I think our listeners will get a lot out of it because I know I did. And to
Yes.
our listeners, thank you for tuning in to the Why Dad podcast.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Shaun. Thank you, Paul. Thank you all.
All right. Until next time.